Chemistry, the only field where accidentally blowing up your lab can still earn you extra credit. 1. The Laughing Gas Dentist, 1844. Horace Wells was a dentist with a dream, a world where tooth extractions didn't sound like a live horror movie. His solution? Nitrous oxide. Yes, the same gas now found at frat parties and dentist offices. Wells first tested it on himself, because apparently human trials just meant me. He inhaled the gas, yanked out his own tooth, and proudly declared that pain-free dentistry had arrived. Then came his public demo. The patient screamed bloody murder halfway through, and the audience laughed him off the stage. Irony at its cruelest. Humiliated, Wells spiraled into chemical addiction, experimenting with chloroform until he lost everything: his career, his reputation, and ultimately his life. It's a grim reminder that when chemistry goes wrong, the side effects can be terminal. 2. The Leaded Gasoline Genius, 1920s, Thomas E. Midgley Jr. deserves his own spot in the Hall of Unintended Consequences. He invented leaded gasoline, a miracle additive that solved engine knocking but introduced mass lead poisoning instead. When people accused him of making poison, he literally bathed his hands in tetrethyl lead and inhaled it during a press demo to prove it's safe. Spoiler, he got lead poisoning shortly after. But Midgley wasn't done. He later created Freon, the gas that would eat a hole in Earth's ozone layer. His inventions were technological triumphs that nearly murdered the planet. He eventually became paralyzed from polio and built a machine to help him move, which, in perfect poetic justice, accidentally strangled him. Even in death, the man couldn't stop inventing hazards. 3. The Exploding Lake Experiment, 1970s. Some high school students in Oregon decided to test pure sodium, a metal that explodes on contact with water. What could go wrong? Everything. They thought tossing a few small chunks into a lake would make a cool fizz. Instead, they dropped in a lump the size of a fist. The reaction created a thunderous explosion so massive it blew fish out of the water, cracked classroom windows, and left the shoreline scorched like a war zone. Local police responded to reports of a bombing. The teacher tried to defend it as a learning experience, which is technically true if the lesson was never trust teenagers with alkali metals. The district banned outdoor sodium demos forever, but the lake still bears the nickname Boom Pond. 4. The radioactive drink craze, 1920s-30s. Once upon a time, radiation wasn't scary. It was fashionable. Enter Radithor, a miracle tonic sold as bottled health water containing radium. The label promised energy, youth, and perpetual vigor. Spoiler, it gave people glowing bones and fatal cancers. The most infamous victim was a wealthy playboy named Eben Byers, who drank 3 bottles a day until his jaw literally disintegrated. When reporters described his death, they said the radium water worked until his face fell off. The FDA finally banned it, but not before a generation of consumers learned that radiation assures vitality was the worst slogan in human history. Radithor proved chemistry's golden rule: if it glows in the dark, maybe don't drink it. 5. The homemade rocket fuel. Disaster, 1957. A group of amateur scientists in California tried to build a homemade rocket in their backyard using powdered zinc and sulfur. The experiment quickly turned into a chemical volcano. When the mixture ignited prematurely, it blew a crater in the driveway and covered the neighborhood in toxic smoke. The fire department arrived to find the remains of what one firefighter described as a science fair project designed by Satan. Amazingly, no one died, but the explosion launched pieces of the garage roof into orbit. The kids became local legends, inspiring early NASA enthusiasts and New City ordinances banning unsupervised propulsion experiments. 6. The Self-Injecting Scientist, 1898. Some people test theories on mice. Others, like Sir Humphrey Davy, skip the middleman. Davy wanted to understand nitrous oxide's effects, so he locked himself in a sealed room and inhaled it for hours. He wrote detailed notes, between giggle fits, declaring it a state of sublime pleasure. But the real danger came later. Other chemists tried it too, some combining gases that caused suffocation or explosions. The era became known as the Romantic Period of Self-Poisoning. Davy survived, but his apprentices weren't so lucky. By the time anesthesia was properly studied, dozens of scientists had literally laughed themselves to death. 7. The Great Mercury Spa Fad, 1900s. At the turn of the century, wealthy Europeans paid top dollar to soak in healing mercury baths. Yes, the liquid metal that makes thermometers explode. Advertised as vital energy therapy, it supposedly cured depression, arthritis, and low ambition. In reality, guests were marinating themselves in neurotoxin. Long-term patients developed tremors, hallucinations, and memory loss, though the spas proudly called it spiritual awakening. One Parisian doctor even marketed mercury steam saunas, the chemical equivalent of cooking your own brain. When scientists finally intervened, the spas simply rebranded, replacing mercury with silver elixirs. Same nonsense, shinier packaging. 8. The acid rain experiment that backfired, 1960s. In the 1960s, environmental scientists in Ontario set out to simulate acid rain to study its effects on forests. They sprayed diluted sulfuric acid over a test area to observe soil changes, sounds controlled, until the wind shifted. A nearby town got an unplanned science shower, corroding car paint, killing lawns, and burning holes in laundry. Residents thought it was some Cold War attack. When the government admitted it was a research miscalculation, the project's leader reportedly muttered, "At least it worked." It did. Acid rain became a global issue. But for the poor townspeople, it was just the day science melted their Chevrolets. 9. The elephant tranquilizer incident, 1983. In 1983, a research team in Oklahoma decided to test a new tranquilizer on an elephant named Tusco. The goal? Understand how much LSD it would take to sedate a large mammal. The answer turned out to be, maybe don't. They gave Tusco 3,000 times the human dose. Within minutes, the elephant trumpeted, collapsed, and tragically died. The scientists later wrote, "We may have overestimated the dosage." You think? The experiment was meant to explore animal behavior. Instead, it became a crash course in what not to do with psychotropic drugs and wildlife. It's remembered today as one of the most catastrophically dumb moments in pharmacological history. A tragic example of humans bringing a lab mindset to a creature that just wanted peanuts, not enlightenment. 10. The exploding toilet of Prague, 1890s. In the late 1800s, a Czech chemist named Franz Kunkel decided to improve sanitation by experimenting with flammable cleaning agents. His invention combined ammonia, alcohol, and a touch of nitric acid, basically a Molotov cocktail in porcelain form. When the mixture was flushed, it reacted violently with sewer gases, producing a blast that blew the toilet clean off the floor. The local papers called it an explosion of cleanliness. Several imitators tried to refine the formula, causing an epidemic of bathroom detonations across Prague. The project was quietly abandoned after one explosion destroyed an entire outhouse. Lesson learned: not every experiment belongs in the pipeline. 11. The Mad Hair Scientist, 1910. Before modern hair dye, a French chemist named Eugène Schuler experimented with paraphenylenediamine, a compound he believed could create permanent color. He tested it himself, dyeing his own hair jet black. It worked beautifully, until he realized the fumes caused dizziness, rashes, and mild hallucinations. Undeterred, he refined the formula and founded a little company called L'Oréal. Workers at his lab nicknamed his early test subjects the colorful corpses because of how toxic the mixtures were. The success of modern hair dye owes a surprising debt to a man who nearly gassed himself in pursuit of better beauty standards. Beauty may be pain, but chemistry made sure it was also flammable. 12. The Self-Mummifying Doctor, 1895. Dr. Thomas Holmes, an American embalmer obsessed with preservation, decided to test his embalming fluid on himself. While still alive, he injected small doses over months to see if it made him disease-resistant. Instead, his skin hardened, his organs failed, and he turned into a leathery monument to bad ideas. Holmes believed he was revolutionizing medicine. In reality, he became his own long-term experiment. By the time he died, he was practically pickled, a man who achieved immortality only in the most ironic sense possible. He's often cited as the first scientist to prove you can take your work way too personally. 13. The Chemical Wedding Explosion, 1787. Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele was fascinated by combining acids and metals. He called it chemical marriage, the merging of opposites. Unfortunately, his experiments often ended in divorce via explosion. One attempt to unite arsenic and nitric acid created a gas so toxic it nearly wiped out his entire lab. Shealy reportedly coughed, made a note about the interesting effects, and went right back to work. He eventually discovered oxygen, chlorine, and other vital elements, but he also poisoned himself repeatedly. He died young, likely from inhaling his own discoveries. Scheele's lab notebook reads like a romantic comedy written by Darwin and directed by Michael Bay. 14. The Glow-in-the-Dark Factory Girls, 1917. In the 1910s, radium girls were factory workers painting watch dials with glowing paint, a mix of zinc sulfide and radium. They were told it was safe, even encouraged to lip point their brushes for precision. The result? They literally glowed at night and slowly died from radiation poisoning. When their bones started crumbling, the company blamed syphilis. The women fought back, launching one of the first major workplace safety lawsuits in U.S. history. They didn't just expose corporate negligence, they forced the government to start regulating industrial chemistry. Their tragedy glowed brighter than the paint itself, a haunting reminder that non-toxic often means we didn't check yet. 15. The Doomsday Chemist of Los Alamos, 1946. After World War II, scientists at Los Alamos were obsessed with measuring the critical mass of plutonium. Louis Slotin, brilliant, overconfident, and very bored, performed what they nicknamed tickling the dragon's tail. He'd hold two hemispheres of plutonium apart with a screwdriver. If the screwdriver slipped, the halves would touch, causing instant lethal radiation. One day, the screwdriver did slip. The room flashed blue, and Slotin yelled for everyone to get out. He absorbed a fatal dose and died 9 days later, describing the sensation as being burned from the inside out. His experiment ended up defining the boundaries of nuclear safety and proving that sometimes the dragon bites back. 16. The Soviet Poison Gas Party, 1952. During the early Cold War, Soviet chemists in Sverdlovsk were testing a new class of nerve agents, supposedly safe in small doses. To prove it, one scientist opened a vial during a meeting to demonstrate stability. The room filled with invisible vapor. Within seconds, half the team fainted, the ventilation system failed, and the lab became a gas chamber of communist innovation. The survivors reported hallucinations of Lenin applauding them. The government covered it up, calling it a ventilation malfunction. But the incident inspired later safety standards for chemical weapons. Moral of the story: never hold a staff meeting inside a murder cloud. 17. The Chocolate Bomb of Cambridge, 1963. Students at Cambridge University thought it would be hilarious to make an edible explosion. They filled a hollow chocolate Easter egg with ammonium nitrate and sealed it shut. When one of them bit into it, the egg detonated with enough force to shatter every window in the dormitory. Miraculously, no one died, though one student later bragged he'd invented the world's first self-eating dessert. The explosion was heard across campus, and local police initially thought it was an IRA attack. Afterward, chemistry professors created a special rule: no experiments involving confectionery and combustibles. It's now known informally as the Cadbury Protocol. 18. The Great Soap Volcano, 1939. A team of British chemists working on a new wartime lubricant mixed glycerin with potassium permanganate in an open sink. Instead of slick, they got eruption. The entire mixture frothed up like rabid shaving cream, spewing purple foam for hours. The reaction flooded 2 lab floors and destroyed 1,000 pounds worth of equipment. Witnesses said the bubbles kept growing even as workers tried to shovel them out the windows. The local paper called it the day chemistry foamed over. Ironically, the reaction inspired the now famous elephant toothpaste experiment used in schools today, a sanitized version of the disaster that once turned London into Willy Wonka's car wash. 19. The Peroxide Submarine, 1916. German engineers during World War I believed hydrogen peroxide could make submarines faster and quieter. Technically true, right up until it exploded. The fuel reacted violently, with seawater turning the engine compartment into a floating pressure cooker. The U-boat erupted in the middle of the Baltic, startling even Allied ships miles away. The project was quietly canceled, but decades later, the British tried the same idea with the HMS Sidon. It exploded too. Apparently, peroxide and ocean water don't get along. The legacy of these oxidizer subs lives on as a footnote in naval history, and a masterclass in repeating the same bad idea twice. 20. The Glowing Baby Food Scandal, 1955. In the 1950s, an American baby food manufacturer tried adding harmless trace minerals to their formula to boost sales. Unfortunately, one of those minerals was uranium oxide, marketed as vitamin U. Babies started glowing faintly under UV light, and parents thought it was cute, until reports of radiation sickness surfaced. When the FDA intervened, the company blamed a labeling error and quietly recalled 500,000 jars. Their advertising slogan, "Builds Bright Futures," became grimly prophetic. No one went to jail, but the fiasco did inspire stricter chemical labeling laws and one of the strangest government memos in history. Please remove uranium from infant diets. 21. The Green Fire of Lake Nyos, 1986. In Cameroon, scientists studying volcanic gas emissions decided to test the lake's carbon dioxide levels by stirring the deep water with pipes and explosives. It worked spectacularly. The disturbance released a massive trapped CO2 pocket that rolled over nearby villages like an invisible tsunami. People and livestock suffocated in minutes. Survivors described it as green fire, though it was really dense, toxic air. Ironically, the experiment confirmed exactly what they were studying, that the lake was a ticking carbon bomb. Today, engineers keep it vented with controlled pipes, but locals still call it the lake that breathes death. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes science doesn't just observe nature, it wakes it up. 22. The Flaming Ice Cream Experiment, 1992. In the early 90s, a chemistry student in Chicago wanted to create self-warming ice cream. His plan? Mix liquid nitrogen with a sugary compound that produced heat during crystallization. In theory, he'd make a dessert that froze and melted simultaneously. In reality, he made an edible grenade. When he added the final ingredient, the cup exploded in a spectacular blue flame that singed eyebrows across the lab. The project ended with 3 minor burns, a melted fridge, and 1 perfectly preserved scoop of ice cream embedded in the ceiling, still frozen a day later. The incident became a chemistry legend titled The Sunday Apocalypse. The student dropped out, switched majors, and now sells regular ice cream. No ignition required. 23. The Phosphorus Sunburn, 1669. German alchemist Hennig Brand was obsessed with creating gold. Instead, he discovered phosphorus by boiling gallons of human urine. He hoped it would crystallize into the philosopher's stone, but it just glowed eerily in the dark. Naturally, he smeared it on his hands to test divine energy. Within days, his skin blistered, cracked, and peeled from chemical burns. He didn't find gold, but he did invent glowing fertilizer and a horrific new way to exfoliate. His neighbors claimed he radiated at night like a ghost. Centuries later, phosphorus became the base for matches, fireworks, and, fittingly, bombs. Brand's experiment proved that sometimes chasing eternal wealth just leaves you with glowing pee and permanent regret. 24. The Paris Perfume Explosion, 1899. In the heart of Paris, chemist Georges Claude tried to make perfume ignite passion, literally. He added trace ether and ethanol for a warming aroma. One hot afternoon, the factory's storage tanks vaporized, turning the building into the world's most romantic fireball. The blast destroyed 6 city blocks and left the air smelling like lilacs and disaster. Newspapers dubbed it l'explosion du parfum. Claude's research did pave the way for modern aerosols, proving that scent and combustion make a memorable combination, just not in a marketable way. The French government later passed a law limiting aromatic volatility, which is bureaucratic code for "please stop making perfume that explodes." 25. The Caffeinated Spider, 1948. At a Swiss lab, biologists studying caffeine's effects on the nervous system decided to test it on spiders. What they found should have been obvious. Caffeinated spiders can't web straight. The normally perfect radial patterns turned into jittery, abstract chaos, like Jackson Pollock on a bad espresso binge. Then the researchers got curious and tried other substances: LSD, marijuana, nicotine. The results looked like a gallery of arachnid breakdowns. The spiders spun webs so warped they could barely catch flies, which, in a cruel twist, made the scientists name the project Operation Buzzkill. The data actually helped NASA study stimulant effects later, but mostly it confirmed what every student already knows. Caffeine helps you start projects, not finish them. 26. The Nitroglycerin Hair Tonic, 1912. Before it became famous for heart medicine and dynamite, nitroglycerin was marketed as a hair stimulant. A daring barber in New York sold it as explosive growth serum, promising thicker hair overnight. It worked, if you define worked as temporarily raising your pulse to 200 BPM. The tonic made customers' scalps red hot, and one unlucky man lit a cigar mid-treatment, creating a minor explosion that singed every mustache in the room. The barber was fined but defended himself, saying, "No one left unsatisfied." The incident led to the first U.S. regulation on volatile cosmetic products, and the unforgettable headline, "Man's hairline moves forward, entirely too fast." 27. The uranium glass dinner party, 1936. In the 30s, uranium oxide was all the rage for making elegant green Vaseline glass. It glowed beautifully under UV light, the perfect conversation starter for the elite. One eccentric socialite in London decided to serve dinner entirely on uranium dishes, boasting that her table shone with vitality. It did, right through the Geiger counter. Guests later developed nausea and hair loss, and the dinnerware was quietly confiscated by scientists. The hostess refused to apologize, insisting the glow made the food look divine. She wasn't wrong, it just also looked radioactive. Today, those same glowing antiques are collector's items, proving that human vanity glows brightest right before it kills you. So there you have it, 27 chemical experiments that proved curiosity doesn't just kill cats, it occasionally levels laboratories. Which one deserves a Nobel Prize for stupidity? You decide, just maybe don't. B. Test it at home.